So today we are going to talk about, kind of high level, we give you an overview about what is DevOps and how do we automate our infrastructure with the help of Puppet. But we'll spend good amount of time understanding what is DevOps and, what are the benefits of having DevOps kind of mindset and what are the challenges that we have. So let me walk you through the agenda for today. So we will talk about, as I mentioned, with DevOps and its importance, why it is needed in today's world and what are the benefits that we have. We will understand the DevOps life cycle, so what all it comes in the life cycle of DevOps. We will give you an intro about Puppet, what is Puppet and how you can use it and to automate the configuration of your infrastructure. And finally, we will use Puppet as an example to give you a kind of demo where you can automate the configuration of web servers, say Apache web server. So thinking about a situation where you have, say, hundreds of web servers and you dynamically add web servers or remove web servers from the pool depending upon the surge in traffic or reduce in traffic, right? So how do you ensure that your web server, the moment you add a host, say Apache web server gets installed and it gets configured, and then it should have the same config compared to what you have on other hosts. So to maintain the consistency of the configuration, at the same time ensuring that the moment you add a new machine or new host, the web server, Apache web server, gets installed in that. Okay, so just a quick intro about DevOps. So what is DevOps? So DevOps is nothing but it's kind of mindset that enables communication, collaboration, and integration between three core functions within the development cycle, right? And the software development lifecycle, the core functions are, software developers, quality engineers, and IT operations, right? And IT operations means the traditional way of doing the IT operations, right? Now, if we can bring all of this, into one platform where we have a kind of, as I said, a kind of framework where we have a common communication platform, a good way to collaborate between these three teams and integrate so that there are no confusions or no concerns from any of the team, and it's not like kind of transactional, but like working as a team kind of mindset. So this is what DevOps is. In today's world, in most of the cases, it doesn't exist because DevOps is still kind of new and catching up with most of the companies. Okay, moving on to the next one. So next one talks about, what is development and operation. So how dev and ops, right? So within dev organization, what are the things that we talk about? So dev is nothing but, a combination of dev and testing, which is QA function. And ops, I think most of you know that ops, kind of different roles within the IT operations world, which is system engineers, system administrators, release engineers, database engineers or administrators, network engineers, storage engineers, and so on, right? These all form, an ops team, right? Or ops skill. As I said, today's world, I think most of the places where you see that we have a kind of gap between dev organization and ops organization. And today's world, again, it's more of a transactional that dev needs something and ops delivers it or executes it, but they do not clearly understand the role of each other. Well, of course, they understand at high level, but how we do things, why we do things, that clarity we do not have very clearly. So DevOps, as I said, it's nothing but having a common platform where we can have communication, collaboration, and integration, and we know each other better that way. Okay, so this is what DevOps is. As I said, DevOps is nothing but a combination of all the life cycle of the software development and all the different functions or roles that we have in software development world, right? So this particular slide talks about development, which is software engineering, quality assurance or quality engineering, and the third one is technical operations or the DevOps or basically IT operations. So what are the different roles for dev, QA, and operations? So typically, as a developer, you write new code or you modify new code and you develop an application. And while doing that, you try new technologies, new way of doing things. And finally, once it is developed, you go ahead and work with ops team or operations team to deploy the code into production. Now, role of operations, and of course, I've not clearly mentioned about the QA role, but QA is again quality assurance team plays a very critical role in the development lifecycle, which is once the code is developed, QA team actually tests that particular application or product before it gets deployed to the production for end customer use. Now, being in operations, we build, deploy, and release the code to the end user and or to the production, and then our end users or customers, they start using it. The role of ops team or operations team is also to ensure that our application has good performance and not like customers are facing a lot of performance related issues, and also the application is available up and available all the time to our customers, right? So that's the role of the ops team. Also, ops team has a responsibility to create or enhance any services. So new services like onboarding new services or enhancing the existing services that we have. At the same time, trying to see how we can make things even better. Like if there are situations like if our systems are really overloaded with lot of requests, so bringing in kind of automation so that performance or availability do not become an issue to the customer. Like if you think about the availability, that's not a feature, right? That's nothing but a hygiene factor. Now, if for whatever reason, if the application is not available, it's a really bad impression on on the company who owns the product, right? We cannot go out and say that, hey, our application is up and running all the time, and that's a feature or a value add to the customer. Well, as I said, that's a hygiene factor. Now coming to this one, so let's try to understand why DevOps is needed. Now, if you try to understand the picture that we have, it talks about the between customers, from customers we gather requirements like what kind of requirement that we have, what kind of application that we need, or basically we analyze the market, we do some survey, and then we come up with the product design and and develop the product, and finally we we release it. So as a dev team, you interact with customers, you gather the requirement, and then you start working on. So that means it's a very good interaction between customer and dev team, or you may have some interface that you have your marketing team or sales team talking to your customers and gathering the requirement. So that means you really have a good interaction between customers and dev team, and they're all kind of on the same page that there's a requirement from customer, and dev team works on that to deliver the product or application. Now, if you see on the right hand side, in many cases between dev and operations team, we do not have that kind of channel today. In many of the companies, I'm not saying everywhere, but many companies, you do not have good, kind of interaction between dev and IT operations team. And since we do not have it, it creates a lot of confusion or problems, right? We'll talk about that in details, but this is what we are going to talk about, that since we do not have still a kind of a way or mindset to have a kind of common understanding between dev and operations, there is a need to have a DevOps, kind of mindset. So let's go to the next one and understand what are the issues or challenges that we have with the current setup, or where DevOps mindset do not exist, right? So as a developer, so you introduce change. Introduce change means you can either develop a new application or you update the existing application or modify the existing application. And as a developer, you try to implement every new techniques, every new method, and then you deploy the change to production. Now, if you're an operations team, change is called the enemy for operations. Why? Because in most of the cases, whenever there is a change, that invites to the problem, like that invites issues, that something got changed, and sometimes you do not even know what could be the after effect of the change, and that can create a customer or end user bad experience, right? As the slide says, that changes can lead to instability. Any change, and I'm saying can and not necessarily all the time, but typically, when you have an issue or outage, the first question that we typically ask, like, what got changed in the last few hours, right? We did not have issue earlier, suddenly we see an issue. So what got changed? So that means in most of the cases, the problems or issues are because of, because someone changed something. Let's go to the next one. Again, it talks about why DevOps. So in this case, again, it's between Dev and Ops tool, Dev and Ops team. Dev uses some kind of tools. Ops uses different types of set of tools, and it becomes sometimes difficult to integrate different tools. Again, Dev and Ops, they have least interest to each other, and not just each other, but each other tools as well, or the way these two function works. They have different implementation of similar tools. Dev can deploy in one way, Ops can deploy in different way, the same tool, but the deployment or implementation could be completely different. Going to the next one. This is again a typical scenario where, as a developer, you develop a code or set of applications, and you send out the artifacts based on whatever requirements that you had from customers, and then you try to deploy it to production. Operations team, they try to manually hack the script received from development team and changes the config files to reflect the changes in production, which could potentially lead to an issue. As I said earlier, most of the time the changes can lead to a problem or issue, and especially when you do not have really good visibility into what got changed, and then you're simply applying some short fix and shortcuts to deploy the change, that can potentially lead to a problem. So what is missing, if you try to understand here, is these two teams, although they are part of the same company, kind of part of the same org, but they do not work together. Both of them, they work in kind of siloed environment, and that is why DevOps is needed. So let's again talk about it. Some of the other problems. In this case, developer gave faulty artifacts, on the left hand side here it is operations. On the right hand side, development, all the artifacts were fine. The error is because of some other issue. So there is some issue. If you see the end result, it talks about 404, which is nothing but page not found. Now, when we try to debug and try to find the problem, developer says that all the artifacts are fine. From my side, there are no problems, but QA was given wrong setup, so they could not test it properly, and now we have this problem in production. That's not my problem. Now, when being in operations, you try to debug, and then you realize that developer actually gave the faulty artifact, and that created this problem. And now our customers are facing problem where our customers are saying 404, which is not a good experience, right? What finally they did, they decided to roll back, see, in this case again, developer finally realized that the correct DB was not deployed. So after the deployment, QA sees more anomalies and raises defects. And actually, in this case, what happened? Since you cannot troubleshoot and try to fix the problem in production, typical situation is you roll back the change, because production is not the place where you actually try to troubleshoot it and fix it. Ideally, all this testing, fixing should have been done in pre-prod environment before you go to production. Once you go to production, you're 100% sure that yes, it is going to work. But worst case, if it doesn't work, the ideal situation is you roll back the change, because production is not the place to troubleshoot and fix the issue, unless there are some limitations where you cannot go back. But in most of the case, production, you do not again make any changes there. Okay, so if you see in this case, since dev and ops team, they did not work together, finally we lost a lot of time and energy, because it was more of a blame game that I did my part, someone did not do their part and all that. Finally, if you see, for customers, they're not bothered. I mean, whose fault is? If it is like dev, QA, or ops, it's not working for me as an end user. So in this case, as I said, it was decided that roll back the changes. So now let's talk about what is the solution, right? The solution is DevOps. We need to have DevOps mindset. Now, as I said earlier, DevOps is nothing but it's a mindset that dev and ops, or dev, QA, and ops, we need to work together. We need to understand each other better, to understand why dev is working on a particular problem or trying to develop an issue, and at the same time, ops should understand, and dev should understand what is how ops work, how we deploy the code to production. So there is a question about the duration of this webinar. Sandeep, it's going to be 1 hour, so it's going to be till 10:30 IST. Another question, will we be having access to these PPTs after the session as well? I'm hoping yes, but you can send an email to support@edureka.co, and they should be able to provide you the PPT. But I'm assuming that you should have access to this one. Okay, so Raju is asking, can you please give a live example of DevOps? Okay, so Raju, we just talked about that, a scenario where the changes were made and were deployed to production. After the change or the application got deployed to production, customers were seeing 404 errors. And now, what happened after that? We were trying to figure out, what happened, why, the proper code was not deployed. And then we realized that, dev, QA, and ops were not in sync. Dev thought that it will work in production. QA thought that I did my part. And finally, when it got deployed to production, it failed, right? So if you try to understand the flow, the current flow, if you do not have DevOps mindset, it's nothing but it's more of a transactional. Everyone is working on just their problem and not trying to understand the big picture. DevOps is nothing but, again, trying to understand the big picture. Then if you try to understand the big picture that, yes, this application needs to get deployed to production, and not just deployed to production, that's not just my only responsibility. My responsibility is to ensure that the customers are able to use the application. If that is not working for some reason, that means we do not have DevOps mindset, right? In ideal situation, when you develop a code, it should be properly tested. Ops should have really good visibility of what kind of changes we are making, what kind of application that we are developing, what kind of capacity that we need to have. At the same time, dev or QA also needs to understand how ops functions, or how, what kind of capacity model that we have, whether the application that I'm developing is going to successfully work in production or not, these kind of things. Okay, let's understand this particular slide. Again, this slide talks about, why DevOps is a solution, right? So if you try to understand what this particular slide says, let me read it out for you. It says, instead of seeing these two groups as silos who pass things along but do not really work together, I think we talked about it just now, DevOps recognizes the interdependency of software development and IT operations and helps an organization to produce software and IT services more rapidly with frequent iterations. Now, again, think about today's situation where changes are really frequent. Gone are the days where we used to have monthly or every 2 months release cycle. In today's world, we make frequent changes, right? In fact, I have seen in many, software development organizations, there is a demand that can I release my code whenever I feel like doing it? I just developed something and I want to release that code to production, and I want to quickly get my customers' feedback, and I do that now. Now, if you do not have DevOps mindset in your organization, you cannot do that, because if you have to have a kind of very strict process that, okay, once the application is developed, you have to have testing for 7 days, and then you have to go through different life cycles, and finally it gets deployed to production. It cannot work. That means we need to bring in the DevOps mindset. We need to bring in a lot of automation, so that the moment you make some changes, the moment you develop something new, you should be able to quickly test and have an automated test instead of doing it manually, right? And then based on that automation, in automated test results, you should be able to deploy it automatically, and not like you have to depend on someone. So this is what the current need is, and this is why we are talking about DevOps and why DevOps is needed. Okay, so there is a question that to become a DevOps, what kind of skill set is needed? So I have a slide on that. Give me another few minutes and I'll share that. But it's not very different than what you have as even in IT operations. But to become a successful DevOps engineer, today's thinking is, of course, you need to know the latest tools and technologies. But more than that, you need to have a kind of mindset that how do we enable, the software development organization to, make quicker releases, quicker changes. Can you give any workspace with live example for try ourselves? So Muralidharan, give me some more time. As I said, I'm planning to give a demo on Puppet and how you can use Puppet and what are the benefits, especially in today's world, why it is needed. So I'll spend some time on that. Okay, again, a lot of questions on scripts, like is scripting knowledge is mandatory to be a successful DevOps? Just to answer your question, yes, but we will talk about, DevOps skills. I have a separate slide for that. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this is the next slide. You asked and we have it. So these are the DevOps skills. And this is again not limited that you need to have only these skills. There are again a lot of things that you need to, but if you have these skills, it definitely helps a lot. And that means today's world, the demand is about the automation, quick deployment and all that. If you have these kind of skills, it really helps, and you will be able to make a successful DevOps organization in your company. DevOps tools, so ability to administer and customize them, right? So it's like a typical sysadmin tool or the skill set that you need to have, right? Second is scripting and automation skills. Very important today's world. I think someone had a question whether scripting knowledge is mandatory. I wouldn't say mandatory, but if you do not have it, you will face a lot of problem. Or in the sense, think about a situation where you have to say remove, not remove. Let me give another example where you have to say add web servers dynamically. You are say handling an e-commerce site, say Flipkart, right? And what you want to develop a capability that if Flipkart, marketing team decides to give a full page ad in say Hindu newspaper tomorrow, I should have a kind of infrastructure where it should be able to scale up based on the demand that we have on a particular day, on a particular hour. Now, can you do it manually? Can you wait for your server to hang or crash and then add some capacity? You cannot. You cannot afford to do that. Now, the way you can do it is you have to automate. You have to have scripting knowledge. You need to have some kind of the tools, technologies, and all that ready. And with the combination of all of this, you will be able to achieve. As I said, I wouldn't say it is mandatory, but thinking about today's situation based on, again, what you're handling, I would say that if you're, again, say, handling this kind of situation where the change is only constant, where you have changes coming in all the time, that means the change in demand, change in frequency and of release and all that, that means you need to have a lot of automation and scripting knowledge. So there is a question, as an Oracle DBA, how it will help. Any skill within operations, if you again think about, just think about Oracle. Let's again think about Flipkart situation, where you, on a particular day, you get a lot of requests, a lot of hits, and you are a DBA, you are just handling the database part. Just imagine that, on a normal day, suppose you get 100,000 requests, right? 1 lakh requests. On that particular day, you suddenly get 10 lakhs requests. So that means your number of requests has gone up by 10x. Now, as a DBA, of course, you cannot scale up immediately. You need to have, again, some kind of automation in place. Again, maybe you should be able to spin up new Oracle instances. You should be able to add capacity to the existing Oracle database, and at the same time ensuring that how can you ensure that the moment you add a new database server, your application is capable enough to dynamically start using the new database service that you add, right? So again, thinking about the end-to-end, like it's not just at any particular layer, like either web layer, app server layer, or database layer, but think about a situation, end-to-end, and see, even if you're a DBA, even if you're a sysadmin, in today's world, you have to think about automation. You have to think about, quick changes, quick releases, right? Another question is, does Docker come under DevOps tool? I would say yes. I mean, see, all these latest tools and technologies definitely helps you achieve the same result or better result quickly, right? Because again, what is Docker basically? Just to give you a quick intro, Docker is nothing but it gives you a container, right? So basically, when you develop an application with the help of Docker, your application can become an image, and that can run on any operating system. So you don't need to worry about what kind of OS I have, what version of OS I'm running. Docker takes care of all that. I mean, it is all just behind the scene. Just about thinking about, say, AWS, the infrastructure that they provide. You do not need to worry about what kind of infra they have, what kind of network they have. You just request and you have servers ready. Okay, a lot of questions on skill set. I may not be able to answer everything because there are a few other things planned, but let me pick up some of the questions that you have. Out of Perl, Python, and Ruby, which language is the best to learn? I see in today's world, Python is becoming very popular, but even if you know Perl, Ruby, that's fine too. I mean, it's any of these language learning others is not very difficult. But again, as I said, Python is more powerful than Perl or Ruby, or at least with Perl compared to Perl. But as I said, any of the coding language that I think that you should be able to achieve what you want to do. Another question, if I have knowledge of MySQL, will it help? Yes. So again, if you're on the database side, no matter what again, think about today's situation, just knowing MySQL may not be enough. Just knowing, maybe think about, how do I replicate the, MySQL database? How do I scale up the MySQL database quickly and dynamically and all that? Okay, DevOps lifecycle or DevOps cycle, right? Now, in this case, if you see on your left, you have version control system where, as a developer, you check in your code, you manage all your version and everything. You have continuous integration tool. Jenkins is again very popular. I think I have it in one of the slides, which talks about the CI/CD and different tools that you can use. But continuous integration is nothing but integrating all the different piece of code together and then releasing that code. Think about a situation again where suppose you work for, say, Facebook. Now Facebook, there is a team who just works on, say, maybe like button, right? The other team who just works on maybe just the login function. The third team who works just so maybe on photo uploads, right? Now when you release the code, you have to integrate all these three applications. I mean, if you think about, Facebook is maybe one bundle application, but it's like combination of three different applications in the example that I gave you, right? Now you integrate all these three applications into one and then you deploy it. But before you deploy, you ensure that all the three applications that you have works together. Maybe independently it is working fine, but when you integrate, maybe it is not working. So continuous integration helps you achieve that, kind of integrate all these three applications, test it properly to ensure that yes, bundling all of this or integrating all these three applications are definitely going to work in production. You ensure that and then you go to production. So now after you do the continuous integration, then app goes into release automation, which is nothing but continuous deployment, and then it gets deployed to production here. And then it is available for the end user. Now in the background, if you see the bottom side of this particular slide, which talks about primarily the infrastructure automation. So that means your application is ready here, but what I talked about just a few minutes back, that you need to have some kind of automation in place where the moment you have a spike in traffic, your infrastructure should be able to take that load. Maybe automating some of that part where you dynamically scale your infrastructure up or down, right, based on the number of hits or requests that you get from the user. Again, in the background, you have application management, means there is a team or maybe application or tool who monitors your application, like how our customers are able to use the application, whether the performance is good or not. Again, you have many tools which gives you this kind of visibility, that what is the turnaround time for, say, a login page. If your login page takes 30 seconds, will you use say any particular application? No, right? If, say, Google search takes 3 minutes to give you a search result, will you use it? You will not, right? We will try to look for an alternative. Similarly, if you're owning an application, you ensure that it is not just up, but at the same time the performance is really good and our customers are able to use it. Couple of more questions. So more or less all Puppet, Salt, Chef, Ansible does config management. Which tool has advantage over other? I would say all are kind of same. Puppet and Chef is more popular, even Salt. So I would say it is up to you to decide which one you want to. All of them gives kind of similar results, and the main objective using these tools are so that you can automate your infrastructure, automate your the configuration management and all that. So it is again up to you which one you want to pick up. I would say all these are latest tools and all gives kind of similar results. Another question is Splunk. So Splunk is, yes, the log aggregation tool which can aggregate your tool into one place, and you can actually have really nice dashboards to give, which can give you really insight about your application performance, the way your users are using your application, the number of hits and all that. You can have really nice dashboard to display all these statistics. Splunk can also alert you in case something goes wrong. If you suddenly see a lot of 500 errors, so you can define the threshold that you say if more than 10% of 500 errors, you want to get notified. So it can send you an email, or you can even set up PagerDuty, which can send you SMS, or it can even call your cell phone. So question, what is the difference between Puppet, Salt, Chef, and Ansible? As I said, these are all config management tools, and everyone, all these tools are really good, latest. So this is, as I said, primarily for automating your infrastructure and managing your config. Okay, moving on to the next one. So DevOps lifecycle, the first one talks about provisioning, where first you provision all the hardware. So here, if you see all databases, the second layer or the middle layer is nothing but your web server, app server, and the top one could be either your load balancer or web server. Okay, the second column talks about after you provision your hardware, you configure it, right? So you configure, in this case, you have load balancers, then you have these web servers, and then you have DB master, which can talk to your DB slave that you have here. So first you provision all the hardware, then you configure the hardware independently, and finally you integrate it so that all of this, the hardware or the infrastructure that you have provisioned, should work together, right? Oops, sorry about that. Where will it be? So here, okay. This one talks about DevOps tools. So what are the DevOps tools that we use? I think some of you had question like, what are the different tools that we use today? There is a question, can you provide the installation steps? So I can maybe give you a couple of URLs that I refer, or I suggest that you can go through to install Puppet, but it's a fairly straightforward. It doesn't take a lot of time to configure, to install and configure. The one that I'm going to give, show you the demo, I already have Puppet installed, and I can, I'm going to show you how you can use Puppet, but I can give you the, couple of URLs which you can use to install and configure your Puppet. Can Jenkins be used for deployment of applications? Yes. So Varun, for CI and CD, Jenkins is very popular. If you see here, this slide talks about that Jenkins is the most popular tool to achieve CI/CD. Of course, you have SVN, Git, Perforce, and all that for more of a repository management system. But yes, Jenkins is very popular today. Some of the DevOps tools on this particular slide: infrastructure automation, you have Cobbler, Foreman, Crowbar, and all that. You have config management, we talked about Puppet, Salt, and Chef. CI and CD, we talked about Jenkins primarily. Monitoring, we have, again, a lot of tools, but Nagios has been around for many years and very popular. Again, a few more questions coming in. What are the prerequisites? So I can, as I said, I can, share you a couple of URLs which gives you what are the prerequisites to install Puppet. But on Linux, it's, as I said, very, very straightforward. You just need to run few commands and you're done. Is Puppet licensed or open source? It's an open source. You don't need to pay for Puppet. What is the difference between CI and CD? Very good question, Satyam. Glad that you asked. So CI and CD, CI is continuous integration. I think I briefly talked about that. When you say, when you have a, say, Facebook, suppose you are working for Facebook and you have 3 teams. First team is working on developing login application. The second team is working on developing, say, photo uploads. The third team is, say, working on the like button that you see. When you go and try to bundle the application into one as Facebook application, you integrate all of this. You ensure that you have automated test, and everything. So that is called CI. That means as a developer, you check in the code into SVN or Git, and from dev to QA, you want to get it promoted. So you use Jenkins to actually do the integration and deployment to next level. By doing all the automated tests, I mean, all 3 applications got integrated, became Facebook application, and you test it whether everything is working fine or not. And then you do all the load tests, performance tests, your feature test and all that. That is called CI. CD is nothing but continuous deployment or even delivery. So that means you develop your infrastructure or setup in such a way that as a developer, I develop something, I check in, and it is available in production in just few minutes. After, of course, all the testing and everything, all automated testing and everything. And I have a dashboard where I can go and see, like, what are the different test cases that it ran and whether it passed or not. And of course, if it got passed, so that means now it is available in production. So Jenkins, and there are many other tools which gives you that capability, but Jenkins is very popular, which helps you achieve CI and CD. So could you give an example on infrastructure automation and CI and CD? So infrastructure automation, I'm going to talk about. CI and CD, I just gave an example. Infrastructure automation is primarily for, say Puppet or Salt or Chef that you use to ensure that you add infrastructure dynamically, and then you configure your infrastructure in such a way that if it is for, say, web server gets installed, configured, and ready for use. If it is a app server, again, all the configuration is done and then gets added to the pool, and same is with the database as well. So Sabarinathan, I did not quite understand your question, that if you have idea knowledge on all of these, can I call myself as software configuration manager? Can you be a little more specific, which area you want to get clarity on? Just going through some of the questions. Okay. So test cases, Manish, you had a question about test cases. So yes, all the different test cases that you can think of, right? So think about a situation, as I said, the 3 examples that I gave about Facebook. Think about a situation like, if you had to manually test it, what are the different test cases that you will write, right? Correct? And once you have, say, automation, you basically automate that so that your tool can test all that and you don't have to manually do it. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Some of the other DevOps tools. So revision control system, Git, CVS, or Subversion. Subversion is known as SVN as well. Software configuration management. So Perforce is again very, very popular. Virtualization, the hypervisor like vCenter, Hyper-V, and all that. Okay, moving on to the next one, DevOps roles. So these are the different roles that we have within DevOps. I think we talked about it even earlier, that we have integration engineer, which integrates the Facebook example that I gave, different application into one. The cloud specialist, like, if you have, say, your application hosted in cloud, say, for example, AWS, you need to have people who really understand how infrastructure works in a cloud environment. Of course, automation and release engineer, I think most of you are aware what are these. So these are some of the roles. And of course, we talked about DBAs, network engineers, system engineers, and all that. Of course, they're part of DevOps. So can I be a DevOps administrator rather than a DevOps developer? And again, Ajaz, I'm not too sure about the question that you have. If you're just asking about title, I don't think it matters much. DevOps, as I said, it's nothing but a mindset that you are a, say, system admin or system engineer, and you work with dev team, understand their world, dev team understands your world. That is what DevOps is, right? So there is a question on Jenkins. So Jenkins, as I said, it's more of a integration tool. The Facebook example that I have been giving, that you have 3 different applications: login, like button, and photo uploads. Typically in an organization, you have 3 different teams working on these 3 applications. Jenkins helps you integrate all these 3 and bundle into one, and then run test cases that to ensure that bundling all 3 really works together and there are no problems. And then, after all the tests are run, you actually promote the code to different levels, from dev to QA, QA to stage to say performance, test, load test, and then finally you deploy it to production. Okay, moving on to the next one. Here are the DevOps challenges that we have. I think we have been talking about it, that it's a cultural mindset, as how the typical mindset of people could be taken off, that no, I am a dev, I do not want to know about how ops work and how my application works in production. Or I'm an operations, I do not want to know how development or a particular application is being developed. So it's a kind of cultural mindset, and it's a transition from being a traditional IT organization or product company to more of a DevOps kind of mindset. It's a transition from traditional, from doing a traditional way to DevOps way. As I said, DevOps is not a technical problem, it's a business problem in today's world, where everyone is really engaged and they want to know what's going on. Think about a situation like when Facebook is down. It's typically DevOps team who handles that. Will the CEO of Facebook be happy? He will not be, right? He will definitely would be interested, what's going on, how quickly can we restore, how do we ensure that it doesn't happen again, and so on. The last point, DevOps is not just about having the latest tools. You may have latest tools, but if you do not use it properly, or if you're not using it at all, you definitely do not have the DevOps, right? And as I said, DevOps is more of a mindset than just having a lot of tools. Yeah, so Varun, your understanding is almost correct. Jenkins is basically to integrate all the different pieces of application into one, and running automated test, and even promoting the code from one environment to another environment. An environment in this case is dev, QA, stage, and so on, right? Okay, now we will talk about Puppet and why it is useful, what we do with the help of Puppet today. And as I said, Puppet is just one example, but there are many other tools which can be used. I think some of you already know about Chef, Salt, and all that. So today's situation, right? If you are a system admin, what's your role? You install servers, you install different hosts, you configure them, you even maintain them, ensuring that it is up and running all the time, and you even update the configuration, periodically, or even takes care of security issues, security vulnerabilities. You even patch the system and all that. This is a typical way, how a system admin works today. Why Puppet, right? I think some of you had a question like, can you give me a live example? Now, one example that I gave was about Flipkart, that you have, say, Flipkart, I think, claimed that they had some 5,000 hosts, and on that particular day, they felt that it should have been maybe 5 times. So I'm not sure if it was 500 or 5,000 that they claimed, but on that particular day, they felt that it should have been probably 5 times. And I'm talking about last October's incident where Flipkart went down just after they had a particular ad on that particular day with a lot of offers. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have that kind of situation and if you do not have automation in place, yes, Varun, so that's a big billion day. Thank you. I forgot about that particular day name. So if they had a kind of automation where they could add servers dynamically and even configure them, probably they would have fixed the problem. Again, if you know about how AWS works, one of the good feature about AWS, which I like, is nothing but elasticity that they provide in EC2, right? So that means you can really have elasticity within your setup, and based on your requirement, you can scale up or down, and you pay for just the differential the capacity that you add, right? And only for the duration that you add, which is nothing but infrastructure as a service that they provide. But again, if you think about what do they do, it's nothing but automation, right? You tell them that the moment it goes beyond, say, 80%, you add few more servers, and they do it automatically. You don't have to worry about. You can even say that, okay, clone one of my web servers and add it to the to the pool, and that's it. Now, maybe in the background they use something like Puppet to configure what you have, to clone basically. And yes, Balaji, as you said, it's auto scaling. Now, if you manage your own infrastructure, how would you achieve it? If you have something like, say, Puppet, you can auto scale it. You can define or have some kind of rules in place where it says that, okay, the moment it goes beyond a threshold, you add some capacity, you auto scale your infrastructure. So Puppet is a configuration management tool that is used for deploying, configuring, and even managing servers. Here are some of the features that Puppet provides. I think there is a question. Can we automate web server config files, HTTPS, through Puppet? So Anthony, yes, you can do it. I may not be able to cover the config file, kind of automation or deployment, but I will give you enough idea how you can actually do that. But yes, you can actually automate to have same config file across your web servers. Okay, coming back to Puppet features. So it controls all the steps right from bootstrapping to the end of server life. I think that answers some of the questions that you had. You can define configuration at the node level. So, and also you can group them according to the roles. So what I think we have been talking about is that you can have a single Puppet master server where you can have configuration defined for web server, DB servers, app servers, and so on. And the moment you add a capacity to, say, web server layer, the same Puppet master can push, or your web server can pull the configuration just for web server part. Again, if you add an app server, your Puppet master can intelligently know that this is an app server and I need to push maybe, or app server can pull just the config for app server, and so on, right? You don't need to worry about that, what kind of file I need to copy and all that. It's all done. It's all automated. You just have to do very few basic things, and that's it. It maintains consistency across nodes. So that means if you have, say, 100 web servers today, and you add 100 first web server now, and you also made some local config changes, what will happen is, as I said, you can have httpd.conf file centralized on your Puppet master, and any change that you do on your centralized server, that will get replicated across all 101 servers. Now, if you make one local change on 101st server that you added, that will get overwritten, because you definitely want to have consistency across all the 101 servers that you have. Okay, can we integrate Oracle WebLogic Server? Yes, any config, any kind of config that we talk about can be integrated with the help of Puppet. Puppet is known for configuration management tool. I mean, that's the first line on this particular slide. Okay, let's move on. So these are some of the advantages that we have, having Puppet. It keeps verifying the config at specific interval, and of course you can define that. You can have your own cron jobs running on your node machines to pull the data from your master server. You can even run it like every few minutes, just in case you make frequent changes on your master server about and making the changes, the config changes. It defines configuration with the help of Puppet Master. We talked about it. It is a large open source developer base. I think some of you had questioned whether this is a licensed one or the open source. So this particular line answers that it's an open source, and of course, since it is open source, you have large number of developer base who regularly works or constantly works on improving what we have in Puppet today. It works smoothly even with large infrastructure. We talked about that. No matter how big is your infrastructure, you can centrally manage that. If your infrastructure or setup is really big, you can maybe have multiple Puppet masters, and maybe Puppet masters can talk to each other and synchronize. But you can actually use Puppet for even very, very large infrastructure or large enterprise setup. can we install like GCC on multiple servers using it? Yes, you can. Any installation, any configuration, you can do it with the help of Puppet. Again, using Puppet, it's very, I'll show you some of the config files. It's very easy to understand, just like, Apache configuration. Apache configuration, you just have to know, the Apache directives. It is as easy as that. So you just have to know a few things. Once you know it, it's like, very easy to configure. And of course, you have documentation available, on the internet. You search and you get the help. Okay, so how Puppet works. I know we are going a little over time. I hope all of you are fine. We will spend another 5 minutes on these slides, and then I'll take another about 5 to 10 minutes to give you a demo. So altogether, I think another 20 minutes, we should be done. So someone is asking, that's Varun, that I don't have much programming knowledge. Can I learn Puppet without any programming? Yes, Varun, you can. You don't need to know any programming to use or manage Puppet. You can do it without that. Can we run Puppet on Ubuntu? Yes, any OS in my knowledge. I have installed it on Linux, but yes, you can use it on any, at least Unix-based operating system. Okay, continue on Puppet. We are actually late. So let me focus on this one now. So we have Puppet Master, which is the central server we talked about, which contains all the config for different hosts. I think different hosts in this case is, you can have web server, app server, database, and so on. The Puppet Master maintains the, manifest on the master machine or host master, the host master machine. Puppet agents are in this case all the different nodes which are connected to master, which need to pull the configuration from master. And the connection between Puppet master and agent is through SSL, so it is a secure channel. You don't need to worry about whether someone is intercepting anything in between. Puppet configuration. So, I think we have been talking about that. We have Puppet master. You have multiple agents in this case, which pulls up the data based on the configuration that you have made from Puppet master, and then it stores it locally, and then again it refreshes based in case there is any change on the master side. So Puppet, I think in my knowledge, it is Ruby. That's the language, Balasubramanian, if that's your question. Now we'll show you the demo on Puppet. Just give me a couple of minutes to log into my servers. Okay, this is my Puppet client machine. And with green background, I hope all of you can see it. I will show you the Puppet config file. Sandeep, give me a few more minutes. So there is a question, can we install Puppet Master on one OS and Puppet agents on different OS? Yes, you can. It is not dependent on any type of OS. Okay, so let's continue on Puppet demo. So the screen that you see with white background is my Puppet master host, and the screen with green background is Puppet client, just to differentiate. Now let me go to Puppet master. So, and I'll show you the config that I have done. But before that, let me maybe share some of the URLs which can help you configure Puppet, and I'm sending it to everyone so that all of you can see it. Okay, so I just sent you few links and few commands on how you can start Puppet Master, Puppet Client. Can at least one of you confirm that you have got everything that I sent? What I sent is, it starts with Puppet Word, and I have 3 URLs and then a couple of commands to start Puppet Client and Puppet Master. Oh, good. Okay, so I hope all of you got it. I would suggest you save this. This is very, very helpful. Some of the URLs that you will find. It will help you install Puppet Master and Client. It will also help you configure Puppet Master and Client both. So since we have used around 10 minutes extra, as I said, I'll need few minutes more just to give you the demo. Let me show you the Puppet Master configuration. A couple of things that you need to do after you install it. So go to etc Puppet manifest on master host. So this is the directory that I have. Under manifest, I have two files. The important one is notes.pp. Now, just let me remove the last 4 or 5 lines which I added for some testing purpose. Okay. Just print the line number. Okay, first line. First line is the permission for my node or client to connect to this machine and can use or can talk to this machine, or which is my Puppet master host. And the second, third, and fourth line ensures that HTTPD or Apache server gets installed on the node machine, for which I'm giving the permission. Line number 5 all the way till 8, yes. So line 5 to 8 ensures that your HTTPD process is running. If it is not running, it will start the service, right? So I hope this is a very simple example. Just wanted to give you an idea that what kind of config that you need to make on your Puppet master host. Again, think about a situation. I mean, in this case, what I have done, I have just added one of my client machine's IP address, and the moment I run Puppet client on my client machine, it will talk to this and will read the config and see what do I need to do. If HTTPD is not present, install it. If HTTPD service is not running, start it, right? These two very simple things. Now, the example that I gave was that you already have, say, 100 servers, right? And you add 101st machine. Now, will you, every time I add a machine, will you come here and add a config? If you have to do it, you have not probably achieved what you want to achieve, like not in real automation. So what you do in this case, typically when you add a web host, right, you actually add an entry into your DNS as well. So think about a situation, suppose you say you manage facebook.com and Facebook has a web server, 10 web servers from 1 to 10, and the DNS entry for those hosts are www.1.facebook.com till www.10.facebook.com. And now you added www.11.facebook.com and you want that HTTPD should be installed and HTTPD process should be started. What you do, as I said, you add an entry into DNS that you have to do anyway. And here in node entry, you can have regular expression that anything after www, any number .facebook.com, you allow that particular client to pull this config from my master host and run it locally there, right? So that way, the moment you add any web host, you just have to make an entry into your, into your DNS and you're done, right? You add it and then it pulls whatever config that you have on your master to the local machine, right? Okay. So Anthony, your question is, does the package HTTPD installs Apache if it is not available? Yes. So that's what it will do. As I said, in this case, it will ensure that Apache is installed on the client machine the moment it connects. There is another question that can it be done for custom software as well? Example, I want to add more nodes of Oracle coherence. Could Puppet be used to automate? Yes, it can do that as well. Again, in this case, these are the example that I'm showing is these are standard examples like HTTPD, for example, but you can actually automate any kind of installation. Again, the syntax will be different, but what I'm trying to say is that using Puppet Master, you can actually control installation configuration of any application. Again, the syntax is different. You have to, Google it and you can find that. It's not extremely difficult. Here, I'm just trying to give you a concept like, how it works. But based on your situation, you can actually search and you will find a lot of documentation online. So Vijay, to answer your question, there's a question that whether it installs packages from repository or web. Again, you can define that. You can have your own repository if you don't want to install from web. Like what if Apache release something new and you are not sure whether this is stable or not, you can have your own local repository and you can point your Puppet to that, Puppet Master to that repository, and the moment your client connects, it will actually pull up from the repository that you have and can install it. But again, just to remind you, the idea is here to give you an idea that you have a Puppet Master where you can have all the configuration centrally defined and your client machines can pull up. But there are a lot of opportunities, lot of ways to make things better. And of course, all of you are asking right questions, but all of these are possibilities and can be done. How to do it? Again, as I said, I may not be able to answer everything, all the questions that you have, but you go ahead and Google it here, just to give you an idea, like, how it is done. Okay, so this is my, as I said, Puppet Master. Let's go to Puppet Client now. Now let's verify. So what we want to do here is we want to install, Apache on client machine and ensure that Apache is up and running or not. Let me first find it if I already have Apache installed here. So I say RPM QA grep HTTPD. I have it here. So let me first remove it so that it can install it. Yum remove HTTPD. So it is Apache is now uninstalled. Let me query. And I have HTTPD tools, which is not for the Apache web server. I also query if I have Apache running or not. Of course, should not be because I just removed it. So I do not have Apache process running. So now if I run the client on this machine, Puppet client, it will install Apache and then it will start Apache web server on this one. There is a question whether we have GUI for Puppet. I do not know for sure. Fanindra, you can maybe check online. I have always used Puppet as a command line, but maybe there is a GUI available, which I'm not aware. Okay. Okay, so let me start my Puppet client. Oops. UPPT. Okay, let's understand this one. So I say Puppet, I pass first argument as agent, which says that this is I'm going to run the Puppet agent, and server name is Puppet Master. Now you can give the Puppet Master IP address as well. What I have done here is I have just made a host mapping entry by adding an entry into etc host file. Right? If you see the last line, I have just added this particular IP and given the name as Puppet Master, so that I can refer my Puppet Master as just typing Puppet Master. But in real scenario, it could be like your Puppet Master dot say your domain name.com, and you can do that. You can have DNS entry and all that. Okay, let's Puppet agent. Okay, let's run this and see what happens. You may see some errors because it's not properly configured, but our objective is to ensure that Apache is installed and running. So let's see if it is installed now. So I'll do rpm-qa grep httpd, and you see this entry now, httpd 246, which got installed just now. Tools we already had, but Apache got installed. Now the second thing was to ensure whether Apache is running or not. My guess is it is not running because, yeah, so it is not running just because maybe while Apache was being installed, client was trying to start Apache as well, which of course will not work unless Apache is installed. So in this case, what will happen next time when Puppet client runs, it will start Apache because the Apache is already installed by then. But let me run it again and see what happens. Okay. Okay, so let's see. ps -ef grep httpd, and I see Apache running, right? So as I said, this was a quick demo just to give you an idea that any package can be installed, any services can be started, the configuration can be managed centrally, and you can have n number of clients and which can actually talk to your Puppet master and can have the same configuration, same installation done across the setup that you have. Any questions that I can answer so far what we discussed? I know we are way over time, but any questions, quick questions that you have? There's a question, can you install using push from master? I do not know whether it can be achieved, but my guess is it can be. But typically maybe you may have a situation where from master you may want to push to all your clients. But typically what I have seen is that from client you pull the configuration from your master, because again what happens if you have say 5,000 clients, and from master if you try to push it, what will happen? It will try to push to all 5,000 clients, and that may not be something that you may be wanting to do, because again it will try to bombard all the 5,000 clients, and you may even have network chokes and issues. So it's better to have your client pull the config from your master server, and that's what I have seen in practical situation. But just to answer your question, I mean, maybe you can Google it and can find out whether you can push the config from master. I think theoretically it should be possible, but I'm not too sure on that. Oops, a lot of questions. Can you differentiate between Chef and Puppet? So both are config management tool, and both has similar capabilities. So I would say, based on your, if you like Chef better, I mean you can use it, but both gives you similar capabilities. So demonstration, if you have 100 servers, let me go back to Puppet Master. So and I edited one file, notes.pp. In this case, as I said, I have just one client, so I have just made one entry. But if you have, say, many clients, right? And if you have, say, web server, app server, and so on, you can have one entry maybe for one type of servers that you have, or one group of servers maybe for web servers. You can have another entry in the same file for different group of servers. So for example, if you want to say install MySQL on 100 servers, you just make an entry for that and it will install on all the 100 servers. Of course, you need to have DNS entries for all the hosts so that you can have regular expression in this particular file. And you do not have to make 100 entries. You can probably say db1.mydomain.com, db2.mydomain. Instead of that, you can say db ? or ? or basically regular expression, and that can take care of that part. Okay, so we have 8 modules available for DevOps, and here are the topics that we cover. And it's typically a weekend class where it is 3 hours for each module. So it's about a 24 hours class in 8 modules that we cover, 3 into 8. And that covers extensively most of the DevOps tools, practices, different way of automation and all that. So in case you're interested, you can get in touch with our support team and they will be able to help you. There is a website where you can go. It's edureka.co/DevOps, where you can get all the information about the different classes. So that's all I had. As I said, thanks once again for really an engaging session. I really liked all of your questions and I hope I was able to answer most of your questions that you had. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.